And on the entire economy is now running on demand, and consumption is being the key driver for the economy. So, given the current situation, like we have seen job losses in IT and other sectors, also major sectors, and these are the people who are the major spenders through credit card or buying homes, cars, and so, do you think that the consumption story is going to play out in the second half and going ahead, given the job losses in India?
So I do think, for sure, IT is going through its own struggles, but there is the GCC angle that still is employing people, right? Secondly, when you look at aggregate wage pools, okay, for the last 6 months, it's grown at close to about double-digit terms, as far as the listed economy is concerned, right? So that is the second data point. The third data point is that the number of, let's say, I should say service professionals, okay, gym trainers, coaches, carpenters. These are skill sets which are very valuable, right? And they are all making more money than say an IT software engineer at the start of their career, right? Now that is something also will lead to disposable income. So yes, the funnel of growth for IT may be that if let's say a large company used to take maybe 20,000 engineers fresh, maybe they'll take maybe only 5,000 or 7,000 engineers. But you kind of mainstreamed and broadened a whole range of activity which can come. I mean, let's take the case of, say, media. Okay, in the 90s, media mushroom in the form of satellite television, and in 1992, say 2010, the big studios were the major generators of employment, right? Today, if you were to look at the major generators of employment in the orange economy, it is the content creators. The number of people who are employed and who make their livelihood on media is maybe multiple of what it was that, which are employed by, say, studios, right? Sure, yeah. So that is the nature that, as long as you're confident that Indians have a hustle mindset, that they want to do better tomorrow, okay? I don't think, the nature of employment might change, but we'll figure out ways to kind of grow. The second aspect is, yes, we've seen the tax boost of GST cuts that came through last year. We've seen credit growth kind of improving. Then you've got, say, the UP state election, which itself is a 30 crore population. And invariably, you've seen most state elections, before that, you've seen freebies coming through, right? You've seen, say, the pay commission hikes, which are likely to happen. PSU banks are likely to see a pay hike. Which typically comes after a gap of few years. So when you see all of that over the course of the next 18-24 months, there still are catalysts for consumption and demand to kind of continue to hold on, rather than to be very despondent by one particular sector. Yes, that is where a lot of India stories kind of come through. But I think there are many, many more moving nuances to kind of consider than to paint the entire consumption basket in a doom loop along with the Indian IT employment growth.
Just to add to that, startup culture is also, there has been a significant pickup. So they have become the largest employer, because some of the large startup companies are the large employment providers today. And the startup culture is also improving. And third is, sometimes we wonder where from the demand for tractor is coming and two-wheeler is coming. So in addition to what you just mentioned about the consumption pattern also improving, so the flips on two-wheeler sales. That's true. When a tractor kind of somebody not necessarily is being bought only by the agriculturists. Even the people who actually operate out of biofuel kind of gas kind of things. That's true. So they actually buy large pool of tractor. Therefore, it just finds its way in new form, and therefore the demand continues to rise.
That's true. And talking of bikes and automobile, one of the major thing has been the GST cut, which has happened, which has made more people to buy cars, and then its auto numbers are showing up despite kind of slowdown, job losses. So do you think that now that will be over by this half, this quarter, the GST impact, and then we'll have a higher base compared to what it's going to play out in the second half. So will that have an impact on auto numbers going ahead?
Right. Actually, that was my theory. Let's say till the last 2 months, numbers started coming through because yes, there has been a lot of pre-buy that can come through because prices have come through, and auto was the single biggest beneficiary of the GST cuts, right? And it was very visible that what was the sticker price, say, before Diwali last year, and after that, there has been a meaningful reduction, right? But the reality is that I think demand has held on much stronger than what one would have thought about. The fact that the last 2 months auto sales have been reasonably strong, I've kind of defied that thesis. Now, why is this happening is something that, only with passage of time we'll be able to get a better sense of. But, when we look at, say, credit growth, when we look at industrial activity, when we look at, say, the number of companies doing capex, all of them don't seem to suggest that, we should be in a despondent time. Yes, if we look at Sensex or Nifty and say that 2 years we haven't made anything and therefore something is wrong, then yes, we can be drawn to that reference point. But it does appear that India is chugging along quite well, right? Yes, maybe we in certain segments we've gone a bit too ahead of time. But I don't necessarily subscribe to the view that, we are in a pole of doom and gloom. I see actually in India which is doing reasonably well. And touch wood, it continues.
It's true. Yeah. On deployment of AI, that's been a big talk, and data center investments have been growing. So, do you think there's a theory that all this brings jobs only during the construction phase? And once the capex is over, it is going to, you don't need more people to work on in a data center or any AI driven. And both this are employments deployed only to bring down, to make more efficiency and reduce human intervention. So do you think with the AI adoption and data center investment happening, going to be more job losses?
No. In fact, at least my view is that no company wants to cut costs for the sake of cutting costs. The idea is to cut costs so that you can give it back to the customer in ways that can expand your revenue pool. Okay. Yes, the nature of a job is, if let's say 10 people were doing a particular job, can you do it with say 2 people in an AI complete driven economy? It's possible. But then that saving that you will do, you will open up 10 new frontiers that are going to come through, because the reality is that customer demand is never fully met. There are ways, there are price points, there are costs, which today people will say that it is not worth it. But when the costs come down, you will unlock a whole range of revenue pools that will come through. Now, for those revenue pool, again, 2 people will need to be there. And you multiply that with, say, 10, 20, 30 such pools that can get unlocked. You will see that the number of employment will only go up. Yes, I'm not trying to be a soothsayer saying that, anybody and everybody will get employed. Yes, we have to skill, we have to change, we have to adapt, but that is true for any technology. So the reality is that any technology breakthrough increases the TAM. Okay, it is not about no company will have the joy of saying that I have saved so much, because that saving doesn't go to the shareholder. Some other competitor will say that, if I have that saving, let me give it back to the customer. And then you start losing market share. And therefore, it goes back to the customer. And the only way to entice customer is to get more people, more service levels, do all of those to kind of improve that customer engagement, right? And therefore, the nature of employment will change. That is without a doubt. But I would imagine that an AI in a place like India is going to be a huge boom. Rather than something that we should be worried about.
That's true.
So, just think about the number of education, the number of healthcare. Today, possibly the top 10% has got access to all of these. With AI, that can broaden far, far more. Areas which otherwise, which were dependent on, say, the government's ability to deliver, can broaden out, right? And we've seen that play in India, for example. You had, say, the Visas and MasterCard, and they're doing a fine job, in the 60s in US, kind of dominating it. And we started UPI, about 10, 12 years ago, a new technology. And you think of the democratization of finance that has happened on payments through UPI. That is what technology does. Brings down the cost so much that it unlocks, and then everybody is familiar with that kind of an instrument. So I would say AI is a massive positive. Yes, there are areas which need to be worried about, but overall I would say for India, AI is a big positive.
That's true.
Plus, also we should see some kind of more interest coming from overseas investment in India, especially in setting data centers. Government last budget gave some tax benefit of 20-year tax holiday they gave.
Sure.
Those who are setting up a data centers in India.
Yeah.
And the ecosystem of data centers,
Yeah.
especially various sectors, gets benefit.
Yeah.
I think India is one has proven repeatedly when it comes to the question of power availability in India is now getting increasingly better and better.
Yeah.
Whereas worldwide, that's not the case. Whether it's Europe or US, it's not a similar situation. There's high probability we can actually expect the way GCC was, India was chosen country for most international firms.
That's true.
Data center could also potentially become a place in India for overseas investors.
That's true. That's true. And on corporate earnings, how do you see it given the cost are also increasing by day? And do you think there's going to be a squeeze in margins for corporates going ahead?
No, for sure. I think margins will get impacted. But what has ailed corporate India earnings has been top line growth, which came down to single digit terms, right? So if sales comes down to single digit terms, and which is in some sense nominal GDP, same as real GDP in single digit terms, right? Because top line is more of proxy of economic activity and let's say a proxy of GDP economic activity. If let's say the top line growth and the nominal GDP goes through, on a larger base, you're going to operate at lesser margins. And that will bring in a greater nominal or denominator, right? So if let's say X becomes 1.08X and in that you're operating at very high margins, as against that X becomes say 1.12X and in that you're operating at let's say slightly lower margins. On that increased numerator, when you multiply the margins, there is a potential that you will see actually higher earnings than otherwise. It's not to say that it's all hunky-dory. What we also gather is that especially with the West Asian crisis, gas availability has been a challenge. It's been rationed out, etc. Now, invariably, it is the unorganized segment that kind of loses out. In the listed space, generally, they have better balance sheets. They've got better ability to get these resources. And therefore, there is also a share gain coming from unorganized to organized segment. So as an economy as a whole, possibly your conjecture is right that, MSME, SME will find it even more difficult. Okay. We, of course, operate in the listed space, so we are not seeing that pain. But overall, yes, there are pulls and pressures. There are some segments of the economy which will have a problem. But that is what we are at least seeing is that, most companies seem to be actually benefiting from improved sales growth rather than worrying about the margin squeeze. And as investors, we would rather prefer nominal sales growth improving because that also improves the potential for capex to happen. And which is what we are seeing. So the number of companies which were doing $100 million capex in 2024 was about 150 companies. That is moved closer to 200 companies. So it is starting to mainstream, right? And that is what we want more and more of, that companies get the confidence that they have to invest more. And that creates the next form of jobs, that creates the next form of profit pools, which can again get reinvested.